Ok, creo que ya estamos en vivo. We're live.
Okay.
Ok, pues bueno, espero que ya estén despiertos. Sé que para muchos de ustedes es temprano como para mí. Y me quiero presentar. Yo soy Clau del canal Clau Reads Books. Y aquí tengo conmigo a Laini Taylor. Y pues sí, estamos aquí para discutir sobre sus libros, especialmente de su nuevo libro que en español se va a llamar El Soñador Desconocido y sale en julio y estoy súper emocionada. Así que este hangout es más o menos pues para discutir sobre el nuevo libro y también para hablar sobre sus otros libros que como pueden ver aquí están atrás. Es la trilogía de Hija de Humo y Hueso y su mini novela que en español se llama Noche de Pasteles y Marionetas. Y pues sí, yo creo que si están aquí es porque todos ustedes ya conocen a Laini Taylor. Yo amo sus libros, la amo muchísimo y estoy muy emocionada porque salga su nuevo libro en español. Y pues sí, Laini, do you want to say a few words?
Hi, it's really nice to be here. I love the readers in Mexico so much, and I'm glad to have a chance to hang out with you and talk and answer questions. So, hi guys.
De hecho, sí, ayer les pedí en Facebook y en Twitter que me dejaran preguntas para Laini y me hicieron bastantes, entonces creo que va a ser un hangout muy entretenido. Obviamente va a ser en inglés, voy a tratar de parar de repente para traducir algunas de sus respuestas, pero en su mayoría va a ser en inglés. Y pues sí, la verdad es que yo casi no sé del nuevo libro, sé que trata sobre sueños y me interesa muchísimo saber de qué se trata. Entonces esta primera parte del hangout la vamos a dedicar a hablar del nuevo libro de Laini, ¿ok? So I was telling them that this first part of the hangout, we are going to talk about your new book,
Okay.
Strange the Dreamer. So the first question is, can you tell us what your book is about?
Yeah. So, do you want me to do it in like little pieces? Are you going to translate everything, or how do you want me to?
No, you
Yeah.
can talk and then I translate the most important details.
Okay. Because I don't want to like just talk and talk and then have you
Yeah,
have to
you have talk. You can,
remember.
yeah, you can talk and talk and talk. It's okay.
Okay. Here it is up here, Strange the Dreamer.
Yay.
Um, it's hard to describe the same way Daughter of Smoke and Bone is hard to describe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of mysteries and secrets. So it's the story of a young librarian in the greatest library in the world. His name's Laszlo Strange, and he's been obsessed since he was a little boy with this mythic lost city.
Okay.
And for very good reason why he's obsessed with it. And he dreams of going there, but he knows it's impossible because he has no money, no connections. He's a war orphan. He has no family, no possibility of traveling halfway across the world. But still, he dreams about it. So it's the
Okay.
story of Laszlo and the city, which is called Weep, which means cry, and
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
and
okay.
and the reason that it's named that, and it's also about the people in the city and the half human children of murdered gods.
Have human children? What?
Of
Of
murdered gods.
really?
Yeah.
And the city, it's a fact that it exists, or Laszlo thinks that it exists.
Yeah, so it's become kind of like most people think of it like a fairy tale, but
Okay,
he believes it was real. And
okay,
something happened to him when he was a child that made related to the city that makes him believe in magic, but nobody else does.
okay. So I'm going to translate some of it.
Okay.
Ok, me dice Laini que El Señor Desconocido trata sobre Laszlo y él está obsesionado con una ciudad que todo el mundo piensa que es pues ficticia, un cuento de hadas, que se llama Weep, que significa llorar, llanto. No sé cómo lo vayan a traducir en español ese nombre, pero él está obsesionado con esa ciudad y pues él quiere ir, su sueño es ir, pero pues no sabe cómo, no tiene los medios, él siempre ha sido muy solitario y pues es básicamente lo principal, es como la premisa principal del libro. Y antes de hablarles más de esto, quiero hacer otras preguntas para poder como complementar toda la historia. Okay, so Lainey, uh, what, here's the question. What do you think is the importance of dreams and why did you decide to build the story around them?
I think dreams are always a major theme in my books to some degree, especially, following your dreams. Or
Yeah.
I love I love the many layers of meaning for dreams. And my last book, Dreams of Gods and Monsters, and this one's
Yeah.
The Dreamer. And I also wrote a story called The Girl Who Woke the Dreamer. That was in
Yeah.
My True Love Me.
Yeah, I have it. I read it.
Yeah, so I think dreams just keep coming back. But I really believe in, in this book you get, so much about the importance of having dreams and following your dreams and how it defines you. But also the idea of being a dreamer. People think of it kind of in a negative sense about Laszlo because he reads fairy tales and fantasy. So for me, he's kind of like a fantasy reader who isn't respected by the scholars.
Okay.
So it's sort of like the book is like a love letter to fantasy readers, that we maybe don't get the respect from the literary community, but in the long run, like the development of imagination ends up being really important for Laszlo and makes him sort of a better problem solver than some of the other more classical kind of scholars. Yeah.
I read a quote, I think in the plot, in the summary, that says that the dream chooses the dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really nice. I love it. Where did you get the inspiration for that quote, for that phrase?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's hard to say where do our dreams come from, but they don't necessarily feel like we choose them. If you want to be a writer, I've wanted to be a writer since I was a little kid, but I don't think that it was like a decision I made, it was just, it chose, the dream chose. And then you have a choice whether to try to do it or not. And, but you don't have a choice whether you have the dream. I think that it's just part of you and you can ignore it or you can pursue it, but you can't decide not to have it. You can't decide to be somebody else. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I never thought of it until I read it and I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want to translate something.
Okay.
Okay. La historia, pues esa historia del soñador desconocido se pasa mucho en los sueños, ¿no? Habla mucho de los sueños y de los soñadores. Y le estaba comentando a Laini que hay una frase que me llama mucho la atención que dice que los sueños escogen al soñador. Y eso es muy bonito porque siempre decimos pues, que nosotros soñamos, los sueños son producto de nuestra imaginación, pero esto es como un ángulo distinto. ¿Qué tal si el sueño nos escoge a nosotros? Porque es cierto, cuando nos dormimos, nosotros no estamos pensando, voy a soñar esto. No, es realmente el sueño el que viene a nosotros. Y desde que leí esa frase fue de, qué bonito, qué interesante. Y Laini dice que ella siempre ha estado como, o sea, no obsesionada, pero muy metida en esto de los sueños. Por eso su último libro se llama Sueños. Por eso su último libro se llama Sueños, Dioses y Monstruos. Este se llama El Soñador Desconocido. También escribió un libro para la novela de Stephanie Perkins que también se llama, o sea, también tiene que ver con sueños y soñadores. Entonces, como que siempre han estado ahí los sueños presentes y se me hace muy bonito que los incluyeron en esta historia y que la historia hable tanto de esto. Es muy bonito y quería compartírselos. So, okay, I finished my translation.
Thank you for that. Very nice.
Do you understand a little or anything?
Just a little bit. I mean, I can pick out words. I've never studied Spanish, but I've studied French and Italian, so I can sort of understand some words, but not,
Like, dream is sueño, dreamer is soñador, so yeah more or less. Okay, I have another question here. I'm reading them, so. Okay, how did you decide the title? Because it sounds really whimsical and it sounds strange. In English, Strange the Dreamer. Mm-hmm. It sounds strange, but I love it. How did you come up with the title?
It sounds strange until you realize that it's the name. His name is Laszlo Strange, and he's called a dreamer So it's a dismissive way that the other librarians say, oh, that's just Strange the Dreamer, like that's the way they call him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so that wasn't supposed to be the title of the book. The title was supposed to be The Muse of Nightmares.
The Muse?
The Muse of Nightmares.
Okay.
And that's about another character, because this other character was supposed to be the main character.
Okay.
But as I was writing it, I really fell in love with Laszlo. This dreamer, this reader, and he stole the book. And that chapter title was called Strange the Dreamer, because that was the chapter where, the other librarians, they shake their head and, just sort of dismiss him as a dreamer, that dreamer strange. And so then that became the title for the book.
I love it. I thought it was like a game of words. But
yeah, it sounds abstract, but then you realize it's actually just his nickname. So, yeah.
It's a very powerful title.
Thank
I
you.
really like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question. Like, is it going to be a trilogy or is it a standalone book?
Duology.
It's a duology.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was supposed to be a standalone book, but it got
Yeah.
too big. So it just basically is one book that's cut into two.
Okay, so I'm gonna translate. Ok, le hice dos preguntas. La primera es de dónde salió el título, porque en inglés suena muy extraño Strange the Dreamer. Es de eso no tiene sentido. Si lo tratan de traducir, no tiene mucho sentido. Pero me está diciendo que es porque el principal se llama Laszlo Strange, es su apellido. Y una vez que sabes que es su apellido, ya tiene sentido que sea Strange el soñador. Porque él es un soñador, es un lector, todos se burlan de él. Y dice que al inicio del título iba a ser diferente, pero se enamoró tanto de Laszlo que decidió ponerle el título en su honor. Y también le pregunté si el libro iba a ser solito, iba a tener trilogía, pero me está diciendo que va a ser duología. Entonces, qué bueno, más libros. So yes, okay. The next question is, do you have a favorite character of this new book?
Yeah, Laszlo, the
Laszlo.
main character. I think we can all relate to him because he's a reader and a dreamer. He's sort of my idea of a fantasy reader, who has a big imagination, and he's very, very sweet also. He's not like Akiva, who I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but or a lot of heroes, I think, in YA books are more like broken, war damaged, brooding anti-heroes. But Laszlo's he's not a fighter or a warrior. He's a librarian, and he's a dreamer, and he's very sweet, and just completely, without, he has no darkness, no guile. He's just like a really sweet, nice guy. So that's it was a little different.
I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, I hope you like him.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the names like Laszlo Strange and the Godslayer? Godslayer? It's
the Godslayer. Some of them I have to make like lists of names and try to come up with just the right name. But Laszlo, I just always loved the name Laszlo.
Really?
So, yeah, I wanted to use that. Yeah, it was one of our names. If we had a son, like maybe we would have named him Laszlo, but we didn't have a son, so we didn't have to choose.
Yeah.
And the Godslayer, he's this war hero, this mysterious character, and so he's called the Godslayer, but you don't know, like, this is a world without, like, what did he kill that was called that was a god? So you don't know. That's one of the questions of the book, like, who is this person and what did he slay? And what's the secret of this city and what happened there? So that's where that came from.
And do you use like a name generator, or it all come from your mind?
I use a lot of different things. Sometimes I'll look at name generators.
Yeah.
It's hard to find something good there because usually they're too crazy. But sometimes like you just find like one syllable or a few sounds that are cool. But I look at maps a lot for countries that most of us won't know about, like countries in Central Asia or things like that, just to get some sounds that feel real,
Yeah.
And also there's some terms in this book that are from astronomy, like Arabic terms for Arabic names of stars that aren't like well-known stars, but that are cool, like Zosma and El Muthalef. These are both from astronomy. So that's a good source. I don't know. I look everywhere. I make these lists of names. Let's see if I can find one.
Okay. Yes.
Oh yeah. So this is like the notebook for the, writing the book.
Okay.
One of the first one anyway. And in the back I have like lists of names. Like so many
That
names.
looks awesome.
names. Yeah. And all of my books I do that. So.
Wow. It's a nice tip to do list.
Yeah, and then when I'm looking later in the book and I need a name, I can look through there and see if there's anything I like, and I always add to it too. So
did you have to do a lot of research for this book?
Not a lot, since it's mostly pure fantasy. But I did research alchemy.
Okay.
But I was creating my own alchemy, so I didn't have to read, it wasn't strict research, just more like inspiration.
Okay. So Uriel wants to know if this is a young adult book or if it's some like a more adult story.
It's crossover. It's young adult, but Laszlo's 20, so he's a little bit older, but still,
Yeah, Daughter of a Smoking Bone is classified as YA, but this book didn't feel like it. I was like, "Whoa, this is really dark."
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of YA is dark these days. I think that, the classification is really interesting. I think it's more a matter of how old the character is usually, and what they're experiencing in life. If it's something that's relevant to young readers, or if it's more life situations for older people. I don't know. It's hard to say, because in some countries my books are published for adults, like in England.
Really?
Yeah, it's published just as general fiction. So it's it's both, I think, but it definitely fits into YA as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, was it hard for you to create a new series of books, a whole new universe?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but fun. It's really fun, but it certainly is a lot of work when you have to create everything. With Daughter of Smoke and Bone, there was things that I could keep, a sort of basic familiarity with the real world, and the way the girls talked and the things they talk about. You don't have to sort of think of everything, You can rely on reality a little bit. But with this, everything that they know, it all comes from this created world. So every reference has to be sort of created, and the way they talk has to be different. And so it was a lot of work, but it's also really fun.
Okay, I'm going to translate that.
Okay.
Okay. Es una pregunta muy interesante. Era que si Laini batalló para crear todo un nuevo mundo, un universo nuevo de fantasía, porque yo creo que eso es muy difícil. Y me comenta que sí, que de hecho fue difícil. Que con Hija de un muy hueso mínimo podía tomar cosas como la forma en que hablaban las chicas y así, porque parte del libro se hace en el mundo real. Pero que sí, o sea, es algo difícil. Y me imagino que sí, más porque si leyeron la trilogía, saben que los mundos de Laini son súper extensos. O sea, con cada libro se expandían y se expandían y se expandían y yo estaba como, wow. Entonces me intriga mucho ya leer sobre este nuevo libro. No sé por qué no lo he leído. Creo que ya me voy a esperar a que salga en español. Ya falta muy poquito, es en julio. Entonces, sí, continuamos con las preguntas. So, yes. Okay. Here I have more. Okay. What do you think is the major challenge of writing a different story?
Like a new story?
Yeah.
I mean, again, coming up with everything from scratch, like creating everything new, the whole world, every character, the things they believe in, what the landscape is like, what kind of animals they have there, everything has to be created. So it took me a lot of time to feel comfortable in the world, like I understood it well enough to really tell the story. And but also finding the story was difficult too. Even though I knew the basic idea of the story, I had a really hard time finding the right way into it and finding just the right way to tell it. So I kept starting over. I wrote the beginning over and over and over, trying to find the right, even just the right way of telling the story. And it took a long time. And every time I would try a new beginning, I would maybe just find a few things that I liked, but then overall it wasn't right. So I gradually built it around,
Yeah, I follow you on Twitter, and I saw you struggling sometimes. You were like, no. And
there was a lot of struggling, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw the tweets, and I was like,
Yeah, it was hard. But, even when the writing is hard, I've learned to just keep going. I used to let it beat me. I used to quit if it got hard, years ago. And so I would start a book, and of course it always becomes hard. So then you never finish anything. And I know so many young writers, they start with this great passion, start a project, but then after like a couple of chapters, they run out of passion and they don't know what
inspiration.
So they stop. But you have to develop that ability to keep yourself working even when it's hard, and to get your passion, to re-inspire yourself and get new passion for the project all the way through.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so many people ask if you could give us some tips for writing. I feel that the one you gave is a really good tip.
That's
But
the main thing. I mean, that's the most important thing at the beginning is to learn how to finish things.
okay,
Even if you instead of starting a novel when you're 18, maybe write novellas or short stories.
yeah,
Just to
okay,
get in the habit of telling a complete story, even if it's only 20 pages long or 10 pages long. Sometimes I think it's easier to do a short story with a beginning, middle, and end, and then you can make it bigger. You can go in and make it longer instead of, starting out to write an 80,000 word novel. Then you get, 10,000 words in and you've only got like the first few chapters and then you run out of passion.
okay,
It's just really, so to develop that habit of just finishing a complete story, even if it's small, and
okay.
just always finish, because you have to learn how to finish. And there's a lot of different ways to go about writing. And for me, I hear a lot of people say that the only way to write a book is to write a fast first draft and then make it better. But that doesn't work for me.
No?
No, I have to edit as I go. So I have to love every chapter before I can go on. So I edit the chapter many times and then I go to the next one. And that's just the only thing that works for my brain. And so I think if you try to resist that, if you have a brain like mine and you try to do a fast first draft, you end up losing all emotional connection to the book, and you hate it, and so you don't finish it because it's not satisfying what you need creatively. So you just need to figure out what works for you and don't listen to other people when they tell you you're doing it wrong.
That's awesome. That's a really good tip because, so many people says that you keep on writing and don't look at the chapters. You can edit later.
Yeah, and that works for some people, but it doesn't work for me. And I know there's a lot of people that can't do that. It's just, we have different kinds of brains and we have to figure out what works. And the few times maybe I made myself do that, I just hated it so much I could never look at it again. So I now know that I do need to do that on a small level, like for each chapter, each scene, I'll like write it fast first and kind of start figuring out things about it. And then I'll write it again and then again and again until I like it. And then I can go on to the next chapter. But I could never do a whole book that way, even though I wish I could, but I can't. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to translate that because it's interesting. Ok, muchas personas de hecho preguntaron pues que les diera, o sea, algunos tips para escribir, porque yo sé que muchos de ustedes, incluido a mí, me van a servir estos tips. Y Laini dice que el principal es que aprendas a terminar tu historia. Dice que que pasa muy seguido, que estás escribiendo muy emocionado, con mucha pasión, y de repente llegas a un punto en el que pierdes la pasión por la historia y eso es lo peor que podría pasar. Entonces lo que aconseja es que si es tu primera novela, trates de hacer algo corto de unas 10,000 palabras con un inicio, una parte media y un final, y que ya después de que hagas eso puedes incluso extender esa historia o hacer una más larga, pero que puedes empezar chiquito para que termines una historia. Tienes que aprender a terminar las historias. Y eso es muy bueno porque siento que a mí se me ha pasado de que pierdo la inspiración y ya no quiero escribir esto. Y la otra cosa interesante que mencionaba es que mucha gente recomienda que tú escribas tu primer borrador del libro todo completo y ya que lo termines, vayas y lo edites. Pero Laini dice que eso a ella no le funciona, que ella tiene que escribir un capítulo y editarlo y revisarlo en el mismo momento en que lo terminó, porque dice que no puede continuar escribiendo hasta que ame ese capítulo. Y es muy interesante porque de verdad, he visto muchos videos de escritura y todo el mundo dice, no, tú termina tu primer borrador y ya que lo termines va a ser más fácil editar. Pero Laini dice que ya no le funciona eso, que de hecho si no ama el capítulo, no puede continuar, y que cuando lo ha intentado, odia todo lo que escribió y no puede continuar. Así que, pues sí, pueden seguir el consejo del borrador o el consejo de Laini y a ver cuál les funciona mejor. Cada quien tiene su mente y su manera de escribir, pero se los quería compartir. So, yes.
Thank you.
I feel like you are just like, yes.
No, I like trying to now since I know what you're talking about, I can try to figure out words. It's cool. I like hearing you. You speak so fast. I love the way Spanish goes. So I'm listening.
Okay, it's okay. So, Chris wants to know what inspired you to write Daughter of Smoke and Bone?
So, to make a long story short, I was trying to write a different book, which I wasn't enjoying. It wasn't coming together. Like it wasn't coming to life. And I had been working on it for like 3 months and I didn't love it. And I actually hated it. And so it started making me hate writing, actually. So I didn't want to get to work on it. And so one day I said, I need to give myself one day to write anything just for fun, just to remember that writing can be fun. So I just sat down to write anything, and I didn't know what that was going to be. And just immediately this girl appeared, this blue-haired art student, and she was arguing with her father, who turned out to be a monster, and he had a wishbone around his neck, and there was teeth in his shop, and it was magical. Like this this came about, and so it was Carew and Brimstone, and I didn't know who they were or why she was raised by monsters or any of that. And I didn't have a story. All I had was these two characters and some questions like, what was that wishbone about? Why couldn't she touch it? And what did he do with all those teeth? And so from there, I started thinking, like, what is the story of these characters? Because they were all so much more alive than the characters in the book I had been trying to write. So I was just really inspired by them and started to try to create a story that answered those questions. And I didn't know what it was going to be, a short story, or then 5 years later, here we are,
Yeah, a long trilogy.
So that's how that came about.
Oh, that's interesting. So you were writing a whole different story. And do you think that story is going to see the light someday, or?
No, that's actually one that I made myself finish it just fast.
Okay.
Like, we're talking about a fast first draft, and it made me hate it. I'll never look at it again.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, yeah, that's a question. Do you remember how did you came up with the whole thing about wishes in exchange of teeth? I found it really interesting.
Yeah,
that's one of the things I loved about Daughter of Smoke and Bone.
Thank you. So when I did that day where I was writing about Carew and Brimstone, it seemed like it just came to me out of nowhere. But then I realized when I look back at my blog, I had been writing exercises in part of a writing community. And when I looked back at it, there was a few little writing exercises that I had done. And one of them was about wishes and teeth. And so just doing these exercises for fun, just to inspire myself, had given me a few little ideas that when I came around to writing about Carew and Brimstone, they were sort of waiting to be used. So I think that writing exercises and writing from prompts, again, writing short things that you can finish, because the challenge of that writing community would be every week you would get a prompt, like 1 word or 2 words. One of them was wishes. And you would just short. And you had to, like, for me, my challenge to myself was that it had to be something complete, even if it was only 1 page. It had to. And so it was a way for me to have fun with writing. And so it led into not just Lips Touch, my other book about kissing, but also eventually into Daughter of Smoke and Bone. So I think it was a challenge to inspire my imagination to come up with ideas and also to have fun. It ended up creating all these, leading into all these books for me. So it was a really good exercise. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for disappearing. I was letting my dog out. It was scratching my legs. Let me out. And I was like, okay.
You didn't show him to us.
Yeah, no, she wanted out. But yeah, I really like that about Daughter of Smoke and Bone. The vibe felt really whimsical and magical, and also like kind of horror because of the teeth. And I was like, this is so awesome. And then the other books became so dark, and I was like, where's the teeth and the wishes?
I know. When I realized when I was writing the second book, I was trying to write it in the same magical tone as the first book, even though clearly it was different. After that ending of Daughter of Smoke and Bone, I had to realize that I had made myself write a war book. But I tried to still keep it fun by having things that were light and magical happen, so that I didn't want to write a book that was so dark you didn't want to go there. Like, I still wanted it to be fun. So that was the challenge. Yeah.
I really liked it.
Thank you.
So, okay. Alexia wants to know if you have a favorite part in your Daughter of a Smoke and Bone trilogy, a scene you love?
I don't know. It's been a while since I, really thought about that. I'm so on the next book now. There's a lot of parts that I love. I don't know, so many.
The scenes of Mick and Susanna.
Yeah, Mick and Susanna are always fun. They always would bring fun to the story when it was getting too dark. That was their important function. I love, all of the moments between Karu and Akiva and trying to get them to forgive each other. I liked when I was writing Days of Blood and Starlight, I was trying to figure out what the story would be. When I figured out the thing that would happen with Ziri and Thiago, that was when I knew what the story would be. But I thought it would happen earlier. So the whole time I was writing that book, I was trying to get to that moment. But it ended up being at the very end of the book. So I was like trying to catch it, And so that was, I love that, because that was what that idea gave me the whole book, And
I didn't expect that. I thought Tiago will be the main villain of the whole trilogy.
Yeah. I don't really outline things. I didn't know if it would be 2 books or 3, so I don't. Okay. Maybe like the story structure ends up being maybe unorthodox a little, but I like that. I like to just follow the characters and have it be a conversation with the story. Like something happens and I have to figure out how they would react, and then the next thing, and just kind of go like that instead of deciding everything in advance. Yeah.
Okay. So let me see. Okay, so if you had a Gabriel or a Bruxis, what would you wish for?
I think that if I had a wish that as strong as a Bruxis, I would have to wish for, health and long life for the people I love, if that was possible. Gabriel, maybe, like Karu does. It would be pretty cool to be able to fly.
Yeah. It will be awesome. So, okay, you were talking about you don't really outline. So if your Daughter of Smoke and Moon trilogy, did you plan all the world building since the beginning? Because it gets bigger and bigger in each book, and I was like, it was planned, or did you come up with it since when you were writing?
Yeah, I come up with it when I'm writing. I know some in advance. I can hear myself on your.
You can hear yourself? I have earphones. I don't know.
I started getting an echo.
Huh, that's strange.
I don't know. It just started, but now it's gone. Okay.
Okay, that's weird. Okay.
I was like trying to ignore it, but so I try to know as much as I can, but I don't do all the world building at the beginning, because if I do, then I think I would just get lost in it. And I want the world building to be led by the story and not the story led by the world building, So I would wait, later on the Skellions come into the story. I would know that they're out there, but I didn't want to decide what they were like until I get to them. And then sort of I will understand better what the story needs, or have a, fresh imagination for creating new worlds at that point. So I like to do it as I go instead of all at once. Because I think, over the course of 5 years, my imagination, what I can come up with 2 years from now is different than if I make myself do it today. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, it started like small and it grew so much. I was like, what's happening?
But all my stories seem to do that. They just kind of expand.
Right. So, okay, I'm going to translate that.
Okay.
Ok, le pregunté sobre la construcción de mundo de su trilogía de Hija de Humo y Hueso, porque si ya lo leyeron saben que el primer libro empieza con una idea muy concreta y de repente el segundo libro cambia, el tercer libro es, o sea, el mundo se expandió totalmente, hay nuevas cosas, nuevas especies, o sea, cosas nuevas que están pasando y yo estaba como, wow, me quedé muy impresionada con la habilidad de Laini para crear mundos tan extensos y tan bien construidos. Entonces siempre tuve esta inquietud de, o sea, ¿lo habrá planeado desde el principio? ¿Lo habrá ideado desde el principio? ¿O mientras fue escribiendo lo fue haciendo? Y sí, me acaba de decir que ella, mientras va escribiendo, va haciendo esto. Pues escribió la trilogía en 5 años y la mente se va expandiendo, va creando nuevos mundos, nuevas ideas. Entonces, ella en lo personal lo hace así. Pero no sé, supongo que para algunas personas debe ser difícil escribir sin tenerlo todo bien estructurado. Les digo, me parece muy interesante. So, yes. Let's continue. Okay. Greta wants to know if you have planned the ending of Dreams of Gods and Monsters since the very beginning of Daughter of Smoke and Moon? The very ending.
I knew where I hoped that Karu and Akiva I knew where I hoped they would be, but that was all. I didn't know how to get there. And so I didn't know all the things that would be happening. That story really grew partway through. I didn't know that that whole extra storyline was going to come in and create a new war and all of that. That was all a surprise as I was writing it. So I knew what I wanted for Akiva and Karou, but I didn't know the rest. Anything else in the book?
Yeah, so many people were asking, were telling me that you left the ending so open. Then they were like, can she tell us anything about what happened next?
Yeah, well, I mean, I it would be nice someday for me to write that. I think I might go back to it and write that next chapter someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't plan for that. Even the character Eliza wasn't even important in the story. Like, she came into it later. I just wanted to see what was happening through the eyes of a scientist. So that was why she was in the story first, and then she became somebody else, somebody much more important to the story. But that was a surprise. And then the whole thing with the the Nithalam and the darkness and what was happening in the world, that all came in partway through, and I didn't know, should I do that or should I not do that? But I went with it because I didn't think that Jael was important enough to be the whole ending of the, like, the defeating him wasn't enough. Like, he would just, I didn't want to give him that honor of being that big in the story, like, it seemed like
he wasn't as good as Tiago. I love Tiago.
He wasn't enough of a true foe for them. Like, there was so much more going on in the world, and I wanted it to be bigger, and I wanted to understand more about Akiva and where he came from, and his people and all of that, and just the way the worlds work. And so it just grew, and I let it grow. That's the thing that happens when you don't outline.
I see.
And so by the end, their world is so big, and everything that's happening there is so big that it just didn't seem like it could just end, So I like the idea. I mean, they're young. They still have a lot of life left, and their world can't be fixed like that. So of course they're going to go on and fight more battles and continue to struggle. And even if they get to have each other or not, there's still so much more left to come in their lives. It's not like happy ending over, now they just live in a cottage and have children. Of course it was never going to be like that.
A person asked if you thought of them having children.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Akiva and Karou are going to get children, and I was like, I want to ask her.
I would think that they would want children. And I wonder what they would look like. Which kind of wings will they have? I don't know. But so yeah, I let it grow, and maybe there will be. I think that the next story would be really big. That next war would be really big. So maybe someday I'll think of writing that.
Oh my God. I'm going to translate it because it's really exciting. Okay. Le pregunté que, ya ven que ustedes me empezaron a mandar muchísimos mensajes de que el final de la trilogía es muy abierto y que se ha pensado en cómo continuar o explicar qué pasó con Karou y Akiva y todos los demás personajes. Y me está diciendo que sí, como dejó que el mundo se expandiera tanto, quería abarcar tantas cosas, y que no es como que terminó el libro y significa que Karou y Akiva vivieron felices para siempre, sino que ellos continúan peleando, continúan viviendo, y sí están juntos, pero, sorry for the noise, pero sí continúan pues viviendo como personas, ¿no? Y dice que tal vez en un futuro sí pueda escribir lo que sigue, no está segura, pero sí le interesa como volver a Karou y Akiva y contarnos qué pasó después. Y piensa que la historia de lo que pasa después va a ser muy, muy grande. Y una persona, de hecho, sí preguntó si Laini imaginaba a Karou y Akiva teniendo hijos. Y dijo que sí, y eso es muy bonito, estoy fangirleando. Que sí, que son el tipo de personas que sí pensarían en tener hijos. Y que cómo se verían, qué clase de alas tendrían. Ay, no sé, yo me ilusioné mucho porque Karou y Akiva sufrieron tanto que merecen un poco de felicidad. Y si llega a sacar, pues no sé, otra historia más de ellos, yo voy a ser la primera en leerlo. Es muy emocionante, chicos, estoy muy emocionada. Okay, so Enrique wants to know how you created a character as awesome as Karou. What inspired you to create her? You told me that she just came to you, no? Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't usually happen. And that didn't
Yeah.
happen with Strange the Dreamer either. But
Okay.
that was like, it felt like a gift, you know. She and Brimstone were just very real in that moment. And I had been doing a lot of writing and a lot of exercises. So maybe I had made it easier for that to happen. But I don't know, it felt like a gift. And she was a little different in the first day I was writing about her. She was maybe a little bit more troubled, a little bit darker, but the more I wrote with her and dialogue with Susanna and just created her. But I think a lot of Carew is like a wish fulfillment character. She was like, when I was a teenager, like that was what I wanted to be, you know.
Yeah.
She's this sort of amazing, you know, she's beautiful and she can fight and she can draw and she speaks all these languages and she has magic, and it's just like I was this character as like a gift to my younger self, like here. Person. So she was really always a joy, and she was, you know, she was a challenge to write still later. I think the main character is always more difficult. Like Susanna was always easy, you know.
Yeah.
A character like Razgut is always easy, or even you know, Liraz, maybe, because they don't have to carry the whole story, so
Yeah.
they can be less developed, or they don't, you know, Carew had to be all the time reacting and believable and she had to just be more full, you know,
Mm-hmm.
fully realized. So the main character is, I think, always for me the hardest, because they have to do the whole work of the book, the plot. Yeah.
Carew did it really well. She's
Thank
an
you.
awesome heroine. Yeah, I love her so much.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you for saying that.
Okay, so Alejandra wants to know why did you decide to set the story of Daughter of Smoke and Bone in Praga?
So yeah, I had been there a few years before I started the book, and I went there with my husband to research another book that we wanted to do, a graphic novel comic book that we wanted to set there. So we were there for 9 days, looking around, like sketching, taking pictures, thinking of it as a setting. But then we didn't do that book, which was about vampires. And so when I was writing Daughter of Smoke and Bone, after that first day with Carew and Carew and Brimstone, I started, not Akiva. Akiva came later. I started to think about where she would live. And at first I thought of New York, you know, and I thought of even Venice. But then, like, it occurred to me that Prague was perfect because it's a real city where real teenagers live and go to school, but it also feels like a fairy tale. You know, it has this, like, a dark Gothic fairy tale, but it's real. So it was perfect. It's an amazing city. Yeah. And it was waiting, because I had been there looking at it as a setting. I had all this stuff I was ready to use, including, you know, Kaz, how he gives these ghost tours. Like, that was, you know, our first night in Prague, we went on a ghost tour, and we would see the ghosts, like the ghosts hiding, waiting for their turn to come out. And so, yeah, it was really funny, because you'd be walking through Old Town at night, and you would see like a ghost, like with a bloody head under one arm, and they're like texting on their phone. And so it was just part of the atmosphere from having been there. And so, so yeah, it was perfect. It was just waiting to be used. Yeah.
I was in Prague like for 1 day. I was in a tour around Europe and so, and I went for 1 day, but it was really beautiful. I wish I could have stayed longer.
Yeah, it's hard to see in 1 day, but you can get an idea, an impression.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Okay. Do you think maybe someday you could tell us more about Brimstone? He was my favorite character, and I feel like he could have his own novella or something. I really love Brimstone.
I know, and people really miss Brimstone, and I do too. I understand. I could see him having a backstory, like a prequel novella, but I think those are hard to write, because you already know the ending, so it's hard. But it would be interesting to see what life was like when he was young, when he was a slave, and but I don't know if I'll ever write that.
But I really miss him. I thought he will reappear in the trilogy, but no.
I know, everybody. I think so many people
I was hoping.
I know. But I think, you know, when you write a story with resurrection in it, you can't bring everyone back, or else you would never believe that.
You can bring Brimstone back.
But you would never believe, I think, that anyone was truly gone. You know?
You broke my heart.
Sorry. I know a lot of readers in Mexico will never forgive me for Hazael either.
No.
And
No.
it's really interesting because on Twitter, whenever I get, it's always readers from Mexico that are like, how could you? Like nowhere else. It's funny, almost.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or at least they don't say so to me.
oh no. So
There's a
okay.
special connection.
Yeah, I know. I love Brimstone more than anyone. I miss him so much.
Sorry.
Okay, so who's your favorite character of Daughter of a Smoking Bone?
Well, Karoo.
Haru?
You know, I spent the most time with Karoo, and she, as the main character, I hope that she would be my favorite character. I would feel I was doing something wrong if she wasn't. But I mean, I love a lot of the secondary characters for different reasons. Like, I love Ziri and Laraz. Of course, I love Susanna and Mick. But
Siri is awesome. I love Siri.
Ziri. But Karoo is the heart of the story, so she
Yeah.
had to be my favorite.
Okay, so I've read a lot of books and I have never found a villain as despicable as Thiago. Like, he was pure evil and I was really scared of him. When I read books, I'm never scared of the villain. I was like, I hate him. But Thiago, whenever he appeared, I was like, oh no, here he comes.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you came up with Thiago? He was really intriguing, but really evil. I was like,
I mean, I don't really think of Thiago as pure evil. I mean, he is now, but I think that the thing about Thiago for me is that he's been made that way by.
He was really evil. He was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, but like, I mean, yeah, sure, he's terrible, but he wasn't born evil. It was the consequence of dying again and again and coming back to be a warrior again and again, and just he was broken. He was broken beyond any hope of repair. Like, and I think that really happens in war. And so that to me was what Thiago represented. That, you know, sometimes you can go beyond any hope of redemption, and and I think a whole group of people that can happen to too when they've lived with trauma for so long, or when they've been so completely indoctrinated in one worldview or war, and they've become an enemy. They can never ever break out of that. And he was so, he had gone so far that he could never be saved. And I think that's really tragic that somebody can start out as a hero and go so far to the dark that they can never be saved. I think that is like the scariest thing for me, the idea that a person can be ruined and never saved, And there's a character like that in the new book too.
Yeah.
But I mean, the question is, and the hope is that, is it possible to save somebody like that?
I think Thiago was beyond saving, beyond salvation, but I love him. I think he's my favorite villain, and whenever in my videos that I say, Thiago is my favorite villain, they all go like, why? He's terrible. No, he's a great villain. He's a terrible person, but he's a great villain. I mean, I was scared of him. I was like, oh no, Thiago.
Yeah, thank you.
I really love him, but I know he's terrible.
It's interesting to see when people start reading it, partway through the series, there's this sort of attraction to him. They don't know how bad he's going to get. So like, I think they think maybe he's going to get better, and that people are drawn to him in the beginning and think, but obviously, hopefully not at the end.
No. Okay, so talking about Night of Cake and Puppets, why did you decide to write it?
Well, I always wanted to see. I tried to fit more of that story into Days of Blood and Starlight. There's a little reference to it when Karoo is telling Ziri about Mick and Susanna's first date and how she did a treasure map to herself. And I just wanted to do something that was fun, to spend more time with those characters, and just be able to write something that was light and romantic. And so that was so much fun to write. And I would love to write Mick and Susanna's wedding too.
Yeah, I know. I will fangirl so much over that. Yeah.
And also, so the only country that has a book form of Night of Cake is it's not out. Yeah, so it's not out in English at all yet, but it's coming in the fall, and it's fully illustrated. Yeah, in English.
I have to buy it.
So Jim, my husband, has done all the art, and it's illustrated like it's Susanna's sketchbook. So it's really fun.
I'm going to die.
Yeah, I hope that
I'm going-
I want to make the time to do the Mickens Susanna wedding, so we can see it, like, kind of catch up with the characters a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to translate it.
Okay.
Okay, sí, estábamos hablando de su libro de Noche de Pastel y Marionetas, que de hecho el único país que lo tiene en español somos nosotros, y está hermoso. Es una mini novela de Mick y Susana, y Laini está diciendo que tal vez en un futuro escriba su boda, y yo como, sí, qué hermoso. Y pues sí, pues solo se los quería enseñar por si no sabían, tenemos este libro en español y hasta ahorita es exclusivo. Okay. Okay, they are telling me that we have 10 minutes. Oh, this goes so fast.
I know, it really does.
Yeah. Okay. Monica wants to know, why do you love to write fantasy, and if you ever plan to write fiction of a different genre?
You know, I love fantasy books. Were the books that made me a reader and a writer when I was young. It was always what I loved the most. And then when I went to high school and university, I stopped reading fantasy and read literature only literature for years. And when I tried to write, I had nothing to write about. Like, I couldn't find my voice as a writer. I couldn't find a subject matter. And so I stopped writing. And it was only later when I rediscovered fantasy, first through Harry Potter, that I found my subject matter and my voice as a writer, because fantasy just is so much more fun than anything else. And so I could see writing other genres, but I don't know if I'll ever write anything that doesn't have some fantasy in it.
Yeah, like magical realism?
Yeah, exactly. There's an adult novel that I've written part of that it's actually set in Mexico.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, at least the beginning is. And it's much more realistic, but it still has some magic in it.
I would love to read that.
Someday. I have to finish this and get back to it.
Yeah, okay. So Omar wants to know that, well, if you were not a writer, what would you be? An author or writer? What would you be?
I don't know. It's a good question. Often I think writers say that they're writers because they have no other skills. I really don't know.
No?
You know, there's nothing really I am qualified to do that I think I would enjoy. I don't know. I know someone who's a film editor, and I think that could be fun. I think my brain would enjoy, because I like editing and I like structure. So maybe that would be fun. But also, I would have to go back to school and start over. But I think I could see myself doing science of some sort.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. My sister is a biologist, and it's really interesting, that she studies. But again, I would have to go back to school and start over. So I don't think that will happen.
You keep writing. Your books are awesome.
I think that's best, probably.
Yeah. So Aurora wants to know if you have a favorite author.
I don't have a favorite author. My mind always goes blank. I have so many favorite authors, or so many authors that I love. I need to make a list, but
some of them.
Yeah, sure. I love. There's a writer named Angela Carter. She's English. She writes sort of fairy tale inspired literary fantasy. I love Lee Bardugo.
I'm reading Six of Crows.
So good. So
good. I'm just about finishing.
Gosh, I mean, there's so many. I love Holly Black's books. I'm trying to picture my shelf to see what do I love. So many books. It's hard. It's like and it is inspired by what I've read most recently. But right now I've been on the road, so I've been reading just a little bit in spring. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have a favorite place to write?
Right here.
Because some people prefer to go outside their houses and write in coffee shops or bookstores.
Yeah, when my daughter was a baby, I would go to coffee shops to write, but it was hard for me because I'm very easily distracted. So I had to, my headphones, and I thought I could never do that. But then when I had to do it, I managed to do it. And so I was glad when I could start writing at home again. But sometimes now I think it is nice to get out of the house, because there are a lot of distractions at home too. So really, there's no perfect. I mean, for me, there's always going to be distractions. So it's just
Yeah.
trying to find, trying to get to stop procrastinating and find a way to be productive. It's hard. And
I
it
know,
all the
it's
time.
really hard. Okay, so Uriel wants to know if there is any kind of relation between Daughter of a Smoking Bone and Strange the Dreamer, some connection?
Yes, there is some connection.
Yeah! Really?
It's a small connection, but when you read Strange the Dreamer, there will be some things that seem familiar to you.
Okay, I can wait for it.
Not like characters or world, but
Yeah.
you'll see. You'll see some. You'll understand. I think the connection.
Yay!
Yeah.
Okay. So, of all your characters, which one do you think will be your best friend?
Maybe Laszlo.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, he's kind of a kindred spirit. I don't know. That's hard to say.
Yeah, I think I'd like Siri.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So you haven't read Strange the Dreamer, right?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
Because I have other readers who love Ziri, and that they've now read Strange the Dreamer, so they're like in a crisis because they don't know if they love Ziri or Laszlo more. It's like, how do I choose? Which one is my husband?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I want to read it more than ever.
Yeah, so see what you think.
Yeah. Okay, so Ceci wants to know if you have plans of visiting Mexico again, especially Mexico City.
I hope so. I always like to come to Mexico.
Yeah?
Yeah, so hopefully soon.
Okay, so Karime wants to know, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
I think that's a really sweet question.
How are you?
Okay, okay, so Ceci wants to know if you have new projects in mind, or
For after this one?
yeah.
So right now I'm writing the sequel to Strange the Dreamer, which is called The Muse of Nightmares. And yes, I have a bunch of books after that I want to write, and it'll be a matter of timing, which one I do next. I'm not sure.
What is your time for writing books? So how many months or years does it take you?
It usually takes me about 1.5 years.
A year and a half. Okay.
So I would love for it to be shorter, but it keeps being like 1.5 years.
No, and you write long books.
Yeah, some might be shorter sometimes, or take less time. But I hope.
Yeah, okay, that's awesome. Okay, so Sylvia wants to know, what's your favorite thing about Mexico?
What's my favorite thing about Mexico? That's really hard. I love everything about Mexico. I love the people. That has to be the favorite thing. I love the architecture and the cities and the color. There's so much color. I don't know if you can see it. I have let's see, up there. The flag. I love the buildings. I love the food. I love the beaches. I love everything about Mexico. The art. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. I love Mexico too. But I
you guys are very
here.
lucky. You live in an amazing place.
Yeah. Okay. So, Victoria wants to know why did you decide to dye your hair pink, and if you have thought of changing the color someday?
So it's almost been 10 years now.
Wow.
It was when my first book was coming out. I don't know exactly why I did it, but it was in my mind for a long time, and I thought, I would never do that, but it'd be kind of fun. And then, like, the longer you go, you're like, wait, maybe I would do it. And I thought, so it was when my first book came out. It was kind of like just to celebrate that. I was going to Comic-Con, and I thought it would be fun, but I didn't know if I would keep it or not. But then I liked it, so now here we are 10 years later.
And you wouldn't like another color?
I don't think so. I think it's this just feels like me now.
Yeah,
I don't know how, I may change it someday, but I would probably just change it back if I changed.
Yeah, whenever I think of you, it's like bright pink.
Yeah, it's hard to think of changing it now.
Yeah.
And also the color, doesn't really come out, so it's not easy to change.
Huh, you always keep it really bright and shiny.
It gets a little bit like faded when I'm in the sun a lot, but not so much. It's a really good.
Awesome. Okay, so they are telling me that we have to finish now. So, do you have some last words? About your new book for the readers? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm. So it's coming in Spanish in July, and I hope that you like it, and I hope you like this new world and these new characters. And I'm really excited about it being out in the world, and it's really good to talk to you. yeah, I look forward to coming to Mexico whenever that works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To promote a new book. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you, Clau, for having me on your show.
Oh, no, thank you for having me here with you. It's an honor. I love to talk to you.
You too. It's really fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, and for answering all the questions.
Oh, they were great
It's
questions.
really interesting hearing you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to say goodbye in Spanish.
Okay.
Ok, pues ya pasó la hora, se pasó súper rápido, estuvo súper interesante. Espero que les haya gustado tanto como a mí esta charla con Laini. De verdad es muy, muy, muy bonito pues ver cómo crea todos esos universos y estoy muy emocionada por ya leer el nuevo libro. Sale en julio, como les digo. Y pues sí, muchísimas gracias a todos los que vinieron tan temprano. Bueno, para mí es temprano, no sé para ustedes, pero muchas gracias a todos los que vinieron a vernos. Espero que se hayan divertido y pues sí. Esperamos también que haya más hangouts aquí con Penguin Random House porque son geniales. Y pues sí, de hecho, de verdad, muchas, muchas gracias por acompañarnos y nos vemos luego. Bye.
Bye.
Yay.